Rock and Roll Hall of Famer and New Orleans legend Allen Toussaint is a singer, pianist, songwriter, arranger, and producer with a career spanning 40 years. Mr. Toussaint spoke with the audience before his performance at Stern Grove Festival on July 6, 2008.
Well, as a young tot, by the time I reached the age of reasoning, I found the piano had already been there.
Yes.
But that's quite a long time ago when I started. But what happened, the way I was introduced to a piano is, I come from a very humble neighborhood, neighborhood full of shotgun houses, which we love dearly.
Yes.
And we were poor as Job's turkey, but children don't know that. So, but my mother and aunt thought it was dignified. My sister Joyce, I had a sister named Joyce, and my mother and aunts thought it was dignified for a young lady in that day to play piano or violin or something like that. So my aunt had a piano that they weren't using, and they sent it to the house for my sister to play. And when the men brought it home and set it in the front room, and they set this big instrument down, a big upright piano, and I walked over it and touched one of the white notes and got a sound immediately, and I was just hooked immediately. I couldn't get over this little tot could get something out of something that big. So that was a divine intervention there. And my sister, since it was there for my sister to play, she began taking music lessons right away, and she hated it. She had a teacher who would spank her hands when she made a mistake. And so that was a terrible way for her to get started. But I loved it dearly, and I wasn't taking lessons, so I could go and pick out little things. And I'm glad to say that I understood the piano structure very early on. The 2 blacks, 3 blacks, 2 blacks, 3 black. When you get up here, it starts all over again. So if there's such a thing as a gift, I think that was a gift part, that I understood that structure. And I was able to pick out little melodies that was playing on the radio, and even things that my sister would practice. And she was the first one who would show me, this note that you're playing here is there on the page. So that's when theory entered my life. And my mother tried installing me into a junior school of music at an early age, but Boogie Woogies had me by then. It was much too late. Performing career, I would say 13 and a half. We started a neighborhood band with Snook Zieglin, the guitarist on. And we had neighborhood horn players and a drummer, and we were called the Flamingos. And it was not to be confused with the vocal group from Chicago during those days, but from our area. And Snook Zieglin was quite a genius then, because he played at 6 and 7 years old the way he plays now. So he never grew up. He didn't have to. Yes, and we had this little band of Flamingos, and the way Snook played, we didn't have a bass player because he played so complete. We didn't need a piano, but there was no way of getting around me. But that's how I started professionally getting, well, if you'd say getting paid as professional. And we'd play for school hops and the likes, and we'd play out in the country in some clubs that we were too young to be in. But during that day, it was okay. Yeah. But that's how I got started professionally. Well, I used to mimic everything on the radio, because coming along playing the piano, I thought all the rest of the piano players could play everything, and I was the only one who didn't know everything yet. I didn't know they were specialists, so whenever I hear piano going, whatever kind, and I heard a lot of hillbilly music when I was a boy coming up, and I used to really love to hear those salon-type pianos rolling, because it seemed like they was doing a lot more than when I found out it was. It was just so hearty and good, though. I found myself playing a lot of boogie woogies, a lot of hillbilly music, and all other kinds of music, as well as my mother bought an Emerson record player one time. And during that day, if you bought an Emerson, well, any kind of record player, they would give you some lanyard. Like if you buy a record player, they give you 2 albums to go along with it, as thank you for buying. And I heard some classical music, and my mother used to love classical music, and she played on the radio on Sunday, so I got a chance to hear these grand operas, and I tried and even pick that out, and it was ever so humble, let me tell you, but because I thought everyone could play everything except me, so I had better get to it. But anyway, I got these 2 records, and one of them was a classical record, and one of them was a big band thing with Benny Goodman. And I began trying to really play some classical music, like all the way through. I remember playing Grieg's Piano Concerto. And Grieg's Piano Concerto, I never thought about the full title of what that is, but my piano was always a half step or more flat. So I played Grieg's Piano Concerto in B flat minor because it sounded like the record. But the name of Grieg's Piano Concerto is Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor. So it wasn't until I got to another piano at some point in my life that I discovered I'd been playing this in the wrong key. But I did have a strong love for classical music, even though I never was classically trained. I took about 8 lessons before my mother gave up on me with the taking lessons, because I just wouldn't do my Gertrude and Elizabeth the way I should have. My John Thompson was just out of the way. I know what you mean, Naomi Neville, right? That's me. I had better justify my existence there. Well, during the time I wrote that, I had been with a publishing company earlier on, and it was time to change publishing companies. And whenever you're making a change with business, there's some other people who have to warrant their existence as well. So you got contracts going from desk to desk, from office to office. So while that was going on, for me to write in my own name would have confused issues at the time. So I used pseudonyms. And the best pseudonym, a moment I used on one incident, I used my father's name, which was Clarence Toussaint. But how much hiding is that? So I used my mother's maiden name, which was Naomi Neville. And so that the whipped cream and all those songs that I wrote with that band had to play was written by Naomi Neville. And I must say that, and I wrote a few songs under Clarence Toussaint. And after a while, I began to, some songs when I was writing them, even after that, the court cases were over and I was back to whatever is normal, some songs sound like this is a Naomi Neville song. I'm not sure what to make of that. But an interesting, funny thing used to happen in my household that checks used to come, the royalty checks, and they would actually come in Naomi Neville name, and a little tiny check would come in Clarence Toussaint name. And I'd actually give my parents those checks. And my mother would sort of do a nana to my father. So that's where that pseudonym came in, and it served me well for a while. I haven't heard from Naomi Neville in my writing in a while. Oh, I never considered myself much of a performer. I still don't. My life has been spent playing behind others. Like, I love to play with singers. Right. And they don't have to be great. I mean, any kind of singer, and especially ones who don't have good timing. But I always did. I like that very much because I always thought of singing as being the most divine part of the music, because you just stand up a person with nothing, and then deliver your spirit out there. And of course, there's no square edges on it. So why does it have to be 1, 2, 3, 4? But again, I always consider myself as one behind the scenes, writing and arranging, and I loved arranging dearly when I did begin to one of those records that came with that Emerson was a big band record which had Benny Goodman and people like that. And I heard these large horn arrangements, and I had to have some of that. So I began to buy beginner's books on every instrument, beginner's trombone, beginner French horn, beginner everything, and see what their practical range was and what they generally could do, and where was middle C on every instrument. So if I wanted to write that, I could. So that's how I started writing arrangements, and I really was dearly in love with that. So in this little band of flamingos, which we had horns and all, I was the one who would write the horn, and that's, I guess that's my embryonic stages of being an arranger, and I really always felt at home and in my comfort zone as being one who makes the things happen as opposed to front stage center.
Your support helps make possible Stern Grove Festival's admission-free concerts and outreach programs. Please make a donation online at www.sterngrove.org.